There we go. Gene, let me make you co-host. So everything tonight from this point forward is going to be recorded, and we will share the link of the recording with everybody. But if you want to go ahead and try to be smart and try to find the WordCamp Miami YouTube channel, that's where it eventually goes. And I'm sure Gene or Guy will at some point can drop a link in the Zoom chat for the YouTube channel. The last video would be last month's stuff in there. So again, one last time, thanks for coming. A lot of people just dropped in just now. Real quick, wpgame.show, register, post your photo of your t-shirt on, pin, whatever, and we'll randomly pick a winner for that. So let's go ahead and I've got a lot of other miscellaneous things to talk about. But first, let's just start off with our speaker, our first speaker. Tonight's theme is about performance and Elementor. So we actually have two sessions or talks prepared around the general theme of performance. And then we have a talk related to Elementor. And so we're going to start off with our person who is currently way past his bedtime right now in Poland. Maciej, do you want to say hi to everybody? Maciej, I'm sorry, that's just not going to work.
No, it was really great. It's Maciek. I know it's one of the hardest.
Your pants are on a fire. So I'm going to stop I'm going to stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, so let me prepare everything.
So where are you? Introduce yourself.
Okay, so I am from Poland, from a city called Łódź, which is also very hard to not only pronounce but to write, because 3 letters out of 4 are just native Polish letters. And Łódź means boat, which is kind of a stupid name for a city that is placed in the middle of the country without any access to rivers or oceans or anything. I work at a company called Buddy, which created, I would say, one of the easiest to use CI/CD softwares there is. And today I will talk a bit about performance. So give me a second to prepare on sharing the screen. And
no problem. Actually, that'll give me a good opportunity to try out my new soundboard. So I wanted a good intro to the Mega Meetup tonight. So while you're fiddling with that, let me try it out here. This is my second attempt ever. So feel free to criticize later at someone else's Twitter account. Yes, there we go. Welcome to the WordPress Mega Meetup. I'm soon to be ex-host David Bissett, and along with me is Gene, Maciej, Leo, and about 80, 90 other people as well. Tonight's episode is brought to you by GoDaddy Pro and my wife, who has graciously given me 2 hours of leisure time tonight to do this. For our first talk will be about static WordPress, and then we'll continue on from there for performance, more performance talks, and Elementor. How did that do? How does that? Yep. Okay. Still got to work on a script, but yes, I see you're ready to go. So let's get to it. Let's learn about static WordPress.
Okay, so in this talk, I will talk a bit about how to make WordPress really fast and really secure with a, I would say, easy trick, because converting to static isn't rocket science. And this is just a small proof that this is really me. Okay, so before I dive into all the details and telling how to convert your website into a static version, what are the differences, and so on and so on. Let's start with a small quiz. Try to find a difference between the 2 screenshots I will share. So if you find any difference, just show your fingers up or something like that. So this is the typical.
Not one particular finger.
Yes,
Okay,
that's true.
Right.
I meant yes. Of
Wave.
course.
We'll keep an eye on chat too. Yes,
Yes,
we have had to fill out paperwork. That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is the typical WordPress version, and this is the static version. Do you see any difference between them? David, can you check the chat? Is anyone saw any difference? I think that you should.
Our reaction time is not so great here in the States. So far, people are saying no, nope,
Okay,
not yet, and stop asking me these questions. That's what we've got so far.
Okay,
somebody's grumpy. Oh wait, that's my daughter. Never mind, ignore her.
Okay, so this is the correct answer because
can you go back and forth? Can you go back and forth?
Shouldn't differ in any way in terms of how it looks from the normally generated WordPress page. But there is one big difference. It's the average response time. First of all, I'm using I think the cheapest hosting in Poland that has SSH access. I'm paying like $2 per month for it. And I'm very proud that it powers a site that is available all over the world. So on this hosting, the average response time from WordPress was about 3,000 milliseconds. So 3 seconds, it's really a lot. While the static version took only 16 milliseconds. So I think that the difference should at least caught up a bit of your attention. And now I can steadily dive into details why. So first of all, what is the difference between static and dynamic? First, let's take a look and how the typical requests to a dynamic website looks like. So when you insert some web address into your browser, your request goes to the server. Server starts parsing all the PHP files. At some points, it starts asking the database for data. And when everything is completed, it goes back to you. So there are two bottlenecks. When you'll get the heavy traffic, the problems might start on the server and on the database. That's why at some point you will probably start using some caching, because with caching enabled, the request will start the same. You will enter some address into your browser. It will go to the server, and the server will check if there is a already cached version of the page you are asking for. If there is, the static HTML version of it is served, and if not, the request look almost the same as in the previous example. So in this way, your website will be much faster, but still there will be situations where the server will have to ask the database for data, and it will work almost the same as without caching. And here's when the static versions come in, because when we are using the static versions, we first build the whole website before it's being served to the server. So all the heavy lifting is done before any traffic goes in. So I can say that we are caching the whole website. We are converting every web page there is into HTML. When everything is ready, we just put it on the server. So when you're asking for some page, the server is serving you the static HTML version. So there is no need to parse anything. There is no need to ask a database for anything. So it will be much, much faster. So when we know how it works, let's start with the upsides of using static versions. First of all, it's speed. You already saw the difference. It was just huge. And it's because there is no need for a database. So the server just has to do one thing, just serve you data. Also, there is no need for parsing. Another thing that will speed up the whole process. Also, the server is much more simpler than a typical, for example, LAMP server, because we don't need many modules like database. We don't need PHP. We don't need lots of caching modules or anything. We just need a server that will just serve the HTML file for you. So it can be any easier. So let's go back to the example I showed at the beginning. It was a test I did with Loader.io. So there were 5 clients for every second for 30 seconds. And without caching, the average response was this almost 3000 milliseconds. When I enabled cache, it was much lower because it was just 350. But with static, it was just 16 milliseconds. So as you see, the difference is really, really huge. And this was the same server. And like I mentioned, the server is really cheap and it's really poor. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. But let's do another test.
It's just like me.
So, okay, let's do another test. 50 clients every second for 30 seconds. Every second for 30 seconds, exactly. And WordPress without caching, it was just 100% error rate. The server just couldn't make it. To be honest, I tried, and from what I remember, the 7 clients was the limit for this server. So with caching, the average response was 600 milliseconds. So it was almost twice than we have in the previous example. But 30% of the requests returned an error. So it's also very bad. And with static, everything went okay, and the average response time was even a bit quicker. So, so I think that in terms of speed, you already see the big difference that converting the website to static gives you. But speed is not the only reason why we should convert. Also, security is one of the reasons, because as we know, we always can read how many WordPress sites are getting hacked or attacked or anything like this. Thanks to converting to static, first of all, we can separate the server from which we serve the static data from the WordPress, and we don't have to worry that while we will secure the WordPress, our rules will in any way also have result on our viewers. So we can, if we know that all our authors are from one country, we can set that only people from Poland, for example, can visit the WordPress site, and we can add many rules that will harden the security on the WordPress without worrying that would affect the static version of the site. Also, it's a great example if you have, I don't know, some small website that you just update once a year. Why not keep it on your local host? Because if the website isn't connected to the internet, no one will have any opportunity to hack it or anything. So you can host it on your local host, just like that. And let's look at the typical attack vectors for WordPress. There are a lot of them. There can be some errors in core, in plugins, in themes. Someone can take over your FTP or SFTP because maybe you had a weak password. There might be a WP admin brute force attack. There can be malware. Someone can take over your DNS. There can be problems with PHP security because it was outdated. And of course, someone can run a denial of service attack on your website. When you will convert your website into static, a lot of those attack vectors are gone. Only those are left, because still someone can get or guess your FTP or SFTP password, and this is not related with WordPress in any way. The same thing goes to the DNS. And in terms of denial of service, yes, someone can launch a denial of service attack, but because your website is much more performant, the static version can withhold a much bigger denial of service attack. So, and also if you will use, for example, a CDN, like Cloudflare, it can just work. The next reason you should convert to statics are the hosting costs. Because, like I mentioned, because to be honest, I'm very proud of using this cheap hosting, because it's working, it's really working, and it's really working fine. And you can use it because simpler hosting just costs less. You won't need any extra caching, any extra modules that will help you to find bottlenecks while your website is behaving slowly. You just don't need it, because you are just serving HTML, so it's simple. Also, there are a lot of free hosting options for static websites. You can use GitHub Pages, you can use Netlify, and many others. From what I know, even Cloudflare is planning to launch something called Cloudflare Pages, so why not? And like I said, I am using this $2 per month per 2 websites hosting. So I can say I pay $1 per website, and the typical website hosting start about 12 or 20 euros per month. So I checked Kinsta, I checked SiteGround. So as you see, the difference in pricing is quite big. So you, when your website will have about 2 years, you will save a lot of money. Also, converting static also will give you a peace of mind, because there are just less things to break. No one can attack it. It can withhold much bigger traffic. So it will just work. Also, if you will use a CDN service, it will be equally fast all over the world and protected from denial of service. So why not? Also, it can be free. Like, for example, this Cloudflare, it's free. And it will just work. And this is the most important thing for us. We just want that our website works all the time. But before you all start converting your website into statics, there are some bad news. There are some downsides. First of all, not every site can be converted into static. If your website has some user profiles, registration, dynamic content based on what the user added in his profile, or a website that is powered by the content that is added by the users, sorry, it just can't be converted, because the static website is built before it goes online. So all the content have to be there. So if your website is created dynamically by the users, sadly, it just won't work. Also, you will need some work with some parts of it, because you're converting your website into a static HTML, you will probably have to use either some third-party plugins or services for example, for forms, for search, for commands, for e-commerce, or you can play around a bit with WordPress API and doing it with Ajax and so on. But for example, on my website that I showed you at the beginning, this WP-Ols, if I'm using Algolia for search, and it's really working great. Also, the thing that is changing is the build process itself, because normally you just press the publish button and the new site, then the new page is there. With static versions, you just have to remember about the build process. So after pressing publish, you have to launch the build process. It depends how you are building your website. So either you will have to go to your CI/CD software, or maybe your service that is giving you the static possibility has some button to rebuild the website. Also, it takes some extra time. This is also something new, because like I said, normally you just have to press the button and the new version was there. And here, this build takes a bit of time. Also, in some cases, this build time can be a problem, because the build time is based on how many posts you have. So if you have lots of posts, the build time will take longer, and it will increase with every new post. So you have to, so you just have to see how it works in your example. There are really multiple ways to convert your website into static. So you just have to find the way that suits you the most. So now, when we know what are the pros and cons, let me show you the ways how we can convert your website into static. There are 3 basic ways to do it. First of all, it's because we are using WordPress, so there is a plugin for it. We can use either WP to static or static HTML output, or simply static. And together with WP CLI and with some CI/CD tool like Buddy, like GitHub Actions, or like Travis, you can automate the process in a very simple way, and it will just work. I will show you later how I am doing it on my website. Using this way, it's quite cheap, because almost all of the tools are free, or at least have a free tier. So there is a chance you won't pay any cent for it. You have full control over the whole process. This is very important for people who loves to tinker with things, to change things, and that like to know what is happening under the hood. For example, for me, it was always very important, because I really love to know what is happening. I hate those when I hate the moment when I press the button, some magic happens, and in the result I get something. I really need to know how it happened. Also, many plugins are compatible out of the box, but not everyone. You just have to check it. Like I mentioned before, there will be problems with contact forms, there will be problems with search engines, and so on and so on, but many of them will just work. The second way we can do it is by using static site generators. So we can use Gatsby, Gridsome, Hugo, or Elementor. Together with either WP REST API or GraphQL API, and with a CI/CD tool, we can just build this website in an automated way. So every time we change something, we will press regenerate, and we'll get the regenerated static site. It's also very cheap, because all the static site generators are free. I marked it as something good, because some people doesn't like PHP. In my case, I really love PHP, so it's nothing good for me. But if you prefer other language, like for example React, and then this way it will be better for you, because you can play around with Gatsby, for example. This way, it's a bit more problematic in terms of plugin compatibility, because Not every plugin has the API endpoint. The good news is that this is really changing. Even last week, for example, Event Calendar added a GraphQL compatibility add-on. So probably when I will give this presentation in a year, I will be able to say that that most plugins are also compatible with it. And there is the third way. You can use a service. There is static, there is shifter, there is flat side. And although they're a bit more expensive because someone is preparing everything for you, you don't have almost any control over the process because there is a button rebuild and it will rebuild in some way that you don't know what happened in there, but it will probably just work. So if you need a static website without any setup, using a service like this will be the best way for you. Also, what is worth mentioning that some of those services, for example, Static, because I played around with it for a while, have some additional plugin integrations out of the box. I know that they have integration with Contact Form 7, with the search, with the WordPress search, and they're just working out of the box when you start using their service. So to sum up, if you love PHP, use the plugin. If you hate PHP, go for the static site generator. And if you don't have time to think about it and just want the static version, use the service. So is it all worth it? Because I showed you how fast it can be, how secure, but I also showed you the downsides. So I think that this GIF will show you. Yes, because I am a developer, so this was it was sure I will answer like this. It depends. In short, really convert your website into static when you don't have any login or registration features, or you don't have any dynamic content. Also, you have I call it a website for reading, like a blog, like a business page or portfolio, and you don't want to care about it. You just want to update it from time to time and let people read it. And you aren't focused on adding a new post every few seconds. So if you have a busy website, converting into static isn't the best way. In any other case, really go for it. You will have much less problems with your website. Because you won't have to worry about it so much. And let me also show you a real life example, because that's why I fall in love into static sites. This is a newsletter I run. It's called WPOs, and the server structure of it. Let me remind you, I am using the cheapest hosting in Poland with SSH access. I paid $2 for it. It's like, and let's be honest, it's really poor. It's a really poor hosting. I use one server with this SSH access, so I didn't separate it. WordPress is under a subdomain. The static version is on top level domain, and I'm using Cloudflare to make it sure that the speed is that the website is very, very, very fast all over the world. I use static HTML output to generate the static version. I'm exporting it as zip, and I'm excluding the URLs I don't need. Really, that's all the configuration you will need using static HTML output. It's a pretty simple plugin, but it just works. And this is how the pipeline looks like. I just first run the WP stat. I call it WP static because I changed the plugin at some point. When it will finish, I am doing some server operations like copying all the content from WP content uploads to be sure every file is there. I am fixing the HT access to be sure it's as it should be. At the end, I am clearing the Cloudflare cache. And the build times takes about 2 or 3 minutes for 30 pages and 4 or 5 minutes for 200 pages. So as you see, it's getting, it will take a bit more time with every other page. But I decided that at some point when I will hit 7 minutes, I will probably upgrade my hosting to, I don't know, like $4 a month. And if you would like to read a bit about converting your WordPress to static, go to Bodyworks and check out this guide. I will share this presentation on the Meetup page comments, so you can see it and click the link here. Okay, so that's all. Are there any questions?
Well, first off, before we ask questions, let's give Maciej here a round of applause. Yeah. Okay. I thought that it was a little overdone, but sure. Great. I mean, it was great. It was great of a talk. So just to reiterate here for people who may not be familiar with static sites too much, long story short here is that this kind of reminds me, I don't know if anybody remembers, but back in the movable type days where
Exactly.
you would hit a button, the site would compile and upload all the HTML to your website, probably through FTP or something like that. So you're talking about something that doesn't use a database, something that has to be simple enough so that you're not posting a lot, or it's not like a social site like you mentioned. And it has to be it's basically HTML in the end. So I'll save my other question until the end, and if it's not already asked, but isn't that the basics of what static sites are?
Exactly, that's true. Because yes, because we're just doing all the heavy lifting before we even start showing the page, and it's a really simple mechanism. But thanks to converting everything to HTML, we can we don't have to worry about many things. It's much easier to scale such website. Because especially thanks to CDN, we can use something called full page caching, and it really resolves a lot of problems that WordPress gives us out of the box. For example, all those attack vectors, they're just gone.
Yeah, that's true. And do you have to, Gary was asking, do you have to rebuild it all at once? Or can you just rebuild, I guess, the pages that are new? And I realize we're taking a broad scope here because there's a lot of different static site ways you could do this. But broadly speaking, do you have to rebuild the site all at once?
In short, it depends what stack are you using. Because, for example, WP2 static, from what I see, is using some internal caching, so not everything is rebuilt. I saw that Static is also having an incremental build. But for example, if you use Hugo, it doesn't have an incremental build, but it's so fast that it doesn't matter that you will rebuild everything every time. Because yeah, Hugo is just the fastest way you can convert to static. Also, from what I saw, Gatsby with its Gatsby Cloud is also having some incremental builds, and they are also working very quick. So it all depends on the stack you are using.
Mm-hmm. So is it
sometimes you can and sometimes not.
So Guy asked if it's possible to create a hybrid site with static pages that don't change much, then still have dynamic pages for posts.
Yes, it can. For example, you can use JavaScript for it, but in such case, I would just think more about using a headless approach rather than static.
And headless is another meetup for another time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dirk asked a few questions here, but I'm gonna pick out one at least, and we'll see if we have time to get to the others. It was a comment Yes, we do get the comments, but I'm going to turn it into a question. What is this quote unquote better than Node.js, which is quite fast in the face of large traffic? Have you ever seen
I
a
would
comparison
say
between? No, go ahead.
I would say why not both? Because a static website can have Node.js. Because remember that converting website into static just removes two elements from the whole equation of your website speed. It removes the database and it removes the parsing. But the whole part about JavaScript, about CSS, it's still there. So you still have to worry about this part. But thanks to converting to static, you are sure that your server won't be a problem anymore. But still, you have to worry about JavaScript and CSS and so on.
So with the technique that with this static site, could you do it for just a landing page of a dynamic site? That question came from Chuck, and I think I'm already know what the answers to this, Chuck. But what's the quick answer to this?
For landing pages, this is the best way. I think like most landing pages should be converted into static because they don't have any dynamical content, and just in most cases they're really static websites that just have some content, and that's all. So converting them would be a great way to do it.
So, but could you do it for a single landing page of an otherwise dynamic site, though? Because to me, that's a caching thing personally. Like you could probably cache the whole page as HTML, but I mean, does static stuff really can you start breaking it down page by page when you do static, or is it just mainly for like it's mostly for a site, an entire site?
It's mostly for an entire site, but you can use some more advanced techniques like having a separate WordPress and using a proxy. So it will look like this is your a part of your website, and so it's advanced. You can do it in some way, but it's not so easy. But if you are using your landing page, if you are hosting your landing pages on subdomains, then that is easy. You are just
I mean, also you can make your landing page maybe a separate install as well. But let's go the other direction. Let's go the other direction. Instead of going small, let's go big. What are your strategies when you have thousands or millions of pages and you have to change something on every page, like a menu listing? That means everything gets regenerated. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So
just like that. Yes, it will get regenerated, and but it isn't a bad thing because, like I mentioned, it really depends on the stack that you are using. If you are using Hugo, it won't take a lot of time. Really, Hugo is like built for speed. So if you can check the comparison between the build time between, for example, Gatsby and Hugo, you will see how fast Hugo is. So if you need something for those thousands and millions of pages, use Hugo.
Okay. Speaking of multiple things here, what do you think of Jekyll in 30 seconds or less? Or do you have an opinion?
No, I don't. If I remember, Jekyll is built on based on Ruby. So because of it, I never was a fan of Ruby. And
okay, so we'll nullify any opinion on that one. But again, these are for these. Here's a question from James. With page builders like Oxygen and Elementor, is there a way to optimize afterwards? So is there, let's just say the majority of popular page builders, how does that factor into static sites, or does
it? In a way, it does, because again, it a bit depends on the page builder. But again, you will remove all the database connection part from the equation. So it will be faster because of removing this part. But still, you would have to optimize your CSS and JavaScripts and so on.
And again, this is for primarily, this is for sites that don't change that much, or you post once a day or something like that. So great for blogs, not so great for BuddyPress sites, which is why I don't
Exactly.
usually
Yeah,
cross into it. Yeah.
that's true.
Have you ever heard of
But
something? Sorry, go ahead.
Mhm. If you, for example, change your website once a week, like I am doing with my newsletter, this is like a perfect solution.
So here's what might be our last question here, because we're running out of time. What do you think about the WP React framework front? I can't read my own
Fronted.
writing. Right? Yes. I
Fronted.
don't know if that was an L or not.
Yeah. Overall, it's great. It's really great, and even if I am just not a big fan of React and JavaScript overall, uh, I think this is a really nice approach. I played a bit with it, and it was nice. It was really nice, and the guys who are doing and creating it are really doing lots of good jobs. So yeah, you can try it, but this is more of a headless approach in a way, because it will ask your WordPress API every time.
So here's a question that may be the last one, because there's a lot of people listening here that are hearing about static sites for the first time. So if somebody is not so technically minded, what would be the static site generator, at least to play around with, or at least get the concept down, that's the easiest you think to use for somebody who's maybe not as deep in development as we are? Like, what would be the easiest thing to click and wow, I see that.
Try. I would recommend using a service like Static, like Shifter. This is the quickest way to convert a website. I played a bit especially with Static, and I was really amazed how quick I was able to convert my my WordPress into Static, because you just have to upload your data there, and that's all. And there is a button, convert to static. That's all.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the time we got for questions. Thank you very much. Again, you're from Poland, you're past midnight. So really, really thank you again. Let me hit the, let's see. Nope, that's not it. All right. Anyway, just pretend there was applause there. Oh, there we go. Thanks again for everything. And thank you very much. And why don't you drop your, we'll have somebody, or maybe you can drop again your contact information in the chat so they can follow you. You also work at Buddy too. You can drop that in there as well. But thanks again. All right. Great. So next up, we actually have put together a trivia game show based on your talk. So anybody who is paying attention, be prepared to deal with that in a few minutes. But first, let me actually put that up right now. Sorry, give me a second. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put this up for us to join the room. And while we wait and join for the room, I'm going to share. Oh, wait a minute. I don't think I can share. I can't share. Can I share my screen and someone else talk at the same time? No, I don't think so. So let me drop a URL in chat and people can join the trivia game and answer some of the questions that Maciej just talked about. And you get to win a prize from GoDaddy if that's the case. Let me. So I'm going to drop this URL into the chat. There you go. It's kahoot.it, and there's the PIN number. So if you're a little confused, we'll share the screen in a second. But until then, see, it's Sima. Are you there?
I am.
Hi, greetings. Why don't you introduce yourself and where you're from and what you're going to talk about for the next 2 minutes or so?
All right. Thank you, David and Jean, for allowing me to speak to your users. So my name is Seema Parekh. I am the Executive Director for an organization called 48 in 48. You can find us at the .org URL. We primarily work with providing nonprofits free websites over a 48-hour hackathon event. So David has been gracious enough to allow me to speak to you guys because you're the primary skill set that my events need. He had also shared a one-pager with you to let you know of the roadmap that we have currently going on for the events for 2021. So I wanted to at least address this forum and invite you to check out our website, check out our events, and hopefully you'd have an opportunity to consider volunteering for one of our events. There are several different ways that you can support us, and one of which is as a WordPress, bringing your skills to build a free website for a nonprofit with a team, or you can act as a WordPress coach. So just very quickly, we have 3 events. The first one is a women's build event that's happening on April the 9th. The second is a social justice event from June the 11th through the 13th. And the third will be a global event in October. Details can be found on our website. Hopefully you guys will be interested enough to support us through volunteering. And with that, I'd turn it back over to your community, David, and to you for any questions that you might have.
Can you do me a favor and drop the website information into chat? And if it's possible to include the pamphlet again, it doesn't have to be print quality. It can be a screenshot or something, whatever, and drop that into chat as well, because I did send it out through an email, but I want to make sure people understand that this is a very worthwhile event. I believe we did this in this time. No, it couldn't have been this time last year. Maybe
in January, actually, right before the Super Bowl. We did it in Miami last year, right before the little COVID bomb went off. So we were able to do an event at the WeWork in Miami, and we had a fantastic turnout. Our goal is always to try to hit 48 websites in 48 hours. Teams are full of 5 or 6 people with the necessary skill sets from project management to design, content, WordPress development, digital marketing. So that's sort of how we work in a nutshell. It's planned out through, it is virtual. So all 3 events currently are virtual. We have an option for the last event at the end of the year to be a global event and it to be started or at least located in Atlanta, because that's where I am and that's where our organization started. But we'll see what happens. We are about 6 years old, so we're not brand new. Our current stats, over 950 websites built over the past 6 years. And wow. That's getting 3,500 people, volunteers, much like yourselves, together in order to make that happen. So I'm super excited to bring this opportunity to you. And if you've got any questions or concerns, I'll also drop my email in there, and you feel free to shoot me a note, and I'm happy to answer that, or anybody on my team will be available to do the same thing.
Great. Well, again, we're going to send the information out to through an email again, so people can be reminded. But thanks again. We have the URL dropped in there, and we have somebody who actually participated in the chat from last year. She said it was awesome, Elizabeth. She, along with Jesse Velez, they did it locally January of last year. So we encourage everybody to take a look at the site, and there'll be an email with more information coming. If you have any questions, you can reach out. So thanks again, Seema. Is it Seema, right? Seema, I'm sorry.
No worries. No worries.
I blame it on my brain. All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll switch over now to, we're going to start now the little mini trivia game show we have here. Hopefully you remember some of the information that, and this might be a mute here. Let's see if I can. Which of these can easily be converted into static? I'm not sure if you can hear the music or not. I've lost track of what earphones this is coming out of. All right. So yes, a blog can be easily converted to static. That's right. So don't know why there's, oh no. Oh no. Okay. So I'm going to have to get back to this because I did not assign any points to the questions. Apparently, everybody comes up. Wait a minute. No, we can do this because if they're all 0, then the quickest wins. So yes, we're gonna keep doing this. This is how I get through all of my mistakes. I push through. So let's figure out what the next question is. 2 of 3. Which of these is an attack vector mentioned for your website? So which of these is a legitimate attack vector that was mentioned in Maciek's website or Maciek's talk about? You know what I mean? Yes. I'm glad nobody picked bad. Unlocked doors? That's attack vector. It just wasn't mentioned. That's good. That's good. Okay. Oh, we're not seeing any answers. It's not updating with answers. Refresh your browser. If you're seeing waiting for players. Never.
It's on your end, David.
Say that again.
It's on your end. Right now it says waiting for players, your screen share. You might want to get out of screen share and get back into it.
Oh, its screen share is paused. Oh, I wonder why it paused. Let me stop the share. All right. Let's share it let's share it again. See it now?
There you go. Yeah, we do. We see it now.
Okay. I don't know why people are just seeing shapes. That's the first time that that's ever happened. So I don't know if that has something to do with my screen share or not. But people are obviously picking something. I guess we'll just call this more or less random because I don't know what to tell you. It's the first time. We'll do one more of these at the end and we'll just make sure that I'll do a run through while the speaker's talking and make sure that text is coming up. But we've never had that problem before. And for some reason we have points now. This is going to be just a totally random thing, apparently.
And we hear the sound now.
Okay, then something's definitely off because there was no sound a second ago. So something's just screwy with the, maybe there's something screwy with the internet and it's caching just weirdly or something like that. Most people did pay attention to, did answer. So they definitely saw the $2. So it's working for some people, I guess. So apologies for that. We'll get it right next time around. So can I skip this? Skip animation? There we go. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this. So Andrea, CJ, and Evie, why don't you, let's see, still, you can send your email address and a screenshot of your screen to prove that it was you to dbissett@dimensionmedia.com. That's my email address. And I'm going to paste that into the chat right now like a brave person. So anyway, let's stop that monstrosity. And we're now going to move on to our next talk. Leo, are you there? Because I'm just screaming into names at this point.
Into the void.
Yes, there you are. And where's your partner?
She's here as well.
All right. So let's talk about website performance. Go ahead and introduce yourselves and let's get started.
Hi. I am going to see if I can get my screen shared so we can get my presentation up. Yeah, so website performance. Can everybody see it? Right. I'm glowing orange now. I didn't anticipate that. So
it looks good on you.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Keefer, and my background is in design research and consumer behavior. And so when I think about performance, I think about it probably from a very different perspective than a lot of you. And so I'm really looking forward to having a conversation about performance as a mindset. And I've brought with me my good friend, Leo Postovoit, who is my technical chains that keeps me grounded and always and rounds out the conversation really well. Leo, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Leo Postovoit, head of product strategy and partnerships at XWP. I have a background in design, in development, in content, and I'm the special unicorn they tell you that doesn't exist and that you should be, but I like my life, and I would love to chat with you about performance and every single aspect today, and I'm super excited to be here with you all, and I hope you're all having a great night.
And it's true. Leo's like a party trick. You can just ask him random questions. And we've actually played this game before where I would pick what I felt like were the most obscure random topics. And he's a smart guy. So it's good to have him in your corner if you haven't met Leo before. So I'm just gonna go ahead and dive right in. Performance is a really big subject. And so as you just saw with Maciek's presentation, there's a lot of different ways that you can think about speed and certain elements of performance. And so tonight, though, I want to have just a quick conversation more from a bird's eye view, and so that way we can hopefully have a really dynamic Q&A, because really depending on where you are, what type of business you run, or types of sites you're interacting with, performance is likely going to mean something different to you. So yeah, we'll hopefully save more time to really dig into Q&A. So thinking about it from an outcomes perspective, who are our users for performance? The one that obviously comes to mind first for most of you is web developers. We're thinking about functionality. Speed obviously is a very important thing that we're paying attention to. What's breaking, what's not breaking, but so performance is really driven into functionality. But another use case for performance is your website users. And they're thinking about completely different things than you are. If they're thinking about your website at all, other than does this work and does this give me what I need? A lot of us know usually web users are not very brand loyal. They're just gonna, if your site's not working, it's not performing for them, they're just gonna move right along to the next component or the next option in the Google search or Bing search or whatever they're doing to navigate. And then, of course, there's the me's of the world, people operating in your C-suite or your marketing or sales departments, or if you're or that other hat that you put on at 3 o'clock after you've been wearing your design or developer hat earlier that day. And so performance means something a little bit different again. Is the site converting? Are we getting leads? Are we getting the right types of traffic? And what does that really look like, and how can you even tell? Obviously, there's many other use cases, but again, that's the point of our Q&A, so I'm just going to kind of keep rocking through as we're thinking about this shift. So in addition to considering that performance is just more than one thing, and it's not all or nothing, there's no right way or wrong way to think about performance. It's really just about making sure you're considering all those different use cases. But deeper than that, it's dynamic. It's a living consideration. Again, like we just talked about with static sites, like there's so many, and the number of questions that came from just thinking about static sites as a solution, there's all these different variables and ways you can scope it out. So it's really impossible to kind of identify a list of what performance has to mean for you or for your agency or for your client. And so it's really more about keeping these living considerations. Technology, sets the tone. It's the elephant in the room. It's the reason why I brought Leo with me, because most of y'all are going to want to talk about the technology, thinking about things like Google Web Vitals and page speed insights, and how your site has to be performant at this technical level to be found in a lot of cases. The next big consideration is the internet itself is a living thing. It changes every single day. The internet that your website was built on is different than what it is today and what it's going to be in a week from now. We see this from everything from algorithm changes or rebranding. Google rebranded and it like broke. Everyone just freaked out because they didn't know what their tools looked like anymore. There's so many things that are outside of your control in the entire ecosystem. So it's not necessarily that you can, again, arm yourself to every single one of them. It's about paying attention to these things, thinking about these things, and not letting this part of the mindset shift out of focus. If you're noticing a pattern, that's on purpose. So there's no standard process to performance. Again, it just means you have to pay attention, you have to be agile, and you have to make sure you know how to pay attention to it. So that's why the mindset is so important, because if you can't think about performance in the holistic way, then you're less likely to find the tools and the resources that you need. And ultimately, that's why this last consideration is all about your team. And that's one of the beautiful things about the WordPress community. That's why we're here. That's why we have events like this, is so we can leverage and learn from one another and make sure that we're paying attention to the holistic solution of a website and the purpose of a website and what you're trying to accomplish. So whether you're on the business side of things, that the website becomes just a means to an end, or if you're on the technical and developing side of things where it's the only piece of the puzzle that you're really paying attention to. Performance needs to be occurring in every one of these job functions and roles. Leo, do you have anything that you want to add in this space?
Oh man, where to begin? I think you mentioned the elephant in the room around core vitals. So who here is afraid of major changes that Google will scrap, smash your website, and that it's going to happen tomorrow randomly? Are people terrified of the algorithm?
I think we're
I know everyone's
terrified
got
of
their
a lot of
cameras
things.
off.
We're terrified of a lot of things. But yeah, I can say that definitely, I don't know if terrified is the right word, but we know months in advance when Google says they're going to make a change, and it's always constant nervous talk as it gets closer and closer.
Well, the good news is they give a pretty clear directive, to tell good stories and to make engaging content, to be authoritative, yada, 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 all the things you probably have heard, a dozen different times. The rare thing is when they plan, updates 6 months or a year, in this case, 18 months in advance. So the core web vitals are actually Google's new set of performance thresholds. So content layout shift, largest contentful paint, and first input delay, which are specific metrics that describe what a user experiences when they come to your website. So coming May 1st, they're deploying a pretty major change to the algorithm to shift all the people that are currently got their slow websites down the chain, people who have fast websites up the chain. So currently, we don't really know what the impact is going to be, but we know that it's going to have a pretty volatile piece to it. So if you are thinking about search, or if you're thinking about how that plays into your general experience, that's probably the most important thing to look into. The other cool thing, and this is something we do quite a bit at XWP, is these are things that are pretty learnable pretty quickly. We want people to care about these things. Your users are probably suffering if you haven't already considered these things. So you might have thought about, fast page loads, but page loads, the initial page load is only one key metric. So the perceived page load, so what happens to actually fill out the entire page, or what happens when a user clicks on a button, the sort of input delays that might happen, or as Maciek talked about, in terms of static, it's really great to be able to have a fast loading web page, and the second one loads relatively quick too. But sometimes that's actually the wrong solution. If you build a full reactive application, you have Vue.js or Next.js or React in the traditional sense, whatever it might be, that second page load can be even faster if you're really looking at that page-to-page experience. So diving into the pieces, the conversation around performance is shifting from saying, yeah, here's some tools, to now how do we care about what users actually do? And I think this is the bigger trend that Michelle and I spent a lot of time talking about, which is that we need to ask our users what their experience is like. We need to record what their experiences are like, and we need to actually do things, collect data, respond to data, test things, and if things don't work, we change it again until it works the way we want it to. And that's the most exciting part. I think that as we see the future of the web sort of shift toward even more metrics, it's been pretty data driven all the way to this point. This is one of the things I think will be really obvious for us is this conversation around the things that users are actually experiencing. And when the layout, for example, gets rebuilt 2 or 3 times to produce just this own little piece, or the common one I still get angry about is a flash of unstyled content. You see an image, but then it gets resized, and then the font finally loads and pushes down, and then also an ad, just for whatever reason, pushes that thing down. That experience is so painful to us, especially on a mobile device, especially when you don't have great network conditions. And that's really what Google's trying to smash down on, is getting people to care about these things. It's the one I think is probably the most relevant to talk about, but was there something else you wanted me to call out, Michelle?
No, I think that's an excellent segue into really what the whole point of this is. And that is that performance, if you're planning for your quality user experiences, so what Leo's talking about, you're testing, you're getting that feedback and understand what those pain points are when someone's trying to use your site or your client site, and then you can plan for it from that very thoughtful and deliberate perspective. And then on the other hand, you also can build for that technical performance. That's the sweet spot. And that's where it's measurable. And that's what's, to me, is the most exciting thing about performance, is because it has impact. There's so many things as a marketer that we get really frustrated in doing, trying to follow best practices, meaningful, authentic content. Oh, my electricity is flickering. I'm in Texas, y'all. I might have
Oh,
a
no.
blackout behind me, but I'm on a so if you lose me, I apologize.
Oh God. Okay. We would have let you gone first, Michelle, if we known this.
I haven't had any utility issues. This was the first.
And that's the last we heard
Monday
from her.
night.
That was the last sentence we heard. All right, go ahead.
It's weird when you get to use freezing as a pun, right?
Right. So this is, as a marketer, we get really frustrated because, we spend all this time crafting really great content and then we don't necessarily see the outcome. We launch a new website that we put all this effort into, but we don't see a growth in traffic. There's so many things that even when we have good quality tracking mechanisms, it's still guesswork and testing and iteration over time. But with performance, it is crystal clear. You can see it before and after, you can see that immediate impact. And that's what's really exciting about all this. So before we switch over to Q&A, just a high level checklist again. Are you thinking about performance in a comprehensive way, or are you stuck thinking about just one component of it, or even one component within one component of thinking about performance? Is everyone on your team thinking about performance? Is it just the developers or just someone who's doing the building? And then do you have the tools? Are you paying attention to the resources that are available to you so you can monitor performance and test performance and then ultimately revise in meaningful ways? And at the end of the day, it's even the same whether you're choosing static sites or anything. You have to be ready for long-term commitment for iterative improvements. Nothing is ever just done when you're building good quality sites that have living traffic and those living, space of the internet. So you've got to just make that commitment to know that it's something that you have to continue to learn and pay attention to. Google's always going to release another update. There's going to be another set of rules that's going to come in and change the game. And if you're not paying attention, your site can become obsolete really quickly. So now I'm glowing blue. So we can go ahead and take some questions.
Hopefully that's not due to freezing to death.
No, it's my brightly colored slides that I was trying to be cheerful, and now it's nighttime.
I think they call it Smurfism, isn't it?
Possibly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. So we have a few questions here. Jim Carter asks, what are some of the tools you all use to monitor performance? Which is a very good question, because there could be a lot of them, but what would you say the ones you should pay attention to and not go overly crazy on would be?
So the very, very first one is just free and easy and super well documented. Michelle mentioned it in her deck, is Google PageSpeed Insights. So it's a free tool that will show you basically a cloud-hosted version of Lighthouse. It'll show you all the issues that are on your site. It'll tell you have opportunities to optimize your JavaScript, the opportunities to improve fonts, to improve media delivery. It's a simple tool that is sort of a one-time test to run. And that's usually good enough for most people just getting started into the concepts around performance. All of the other sort of more traditional tools that people have been using for a while, whether it's YSlow or Pingdom, they're decent, I think, as well to getting more details. Also, Web Page Test is really great at getting some deeper information around the waterfall, but usually PageSpeed Insights is good enough for that sort of initial page load. If you're looking for tools to monitor over time, the tool that we use at XWP that we really like is Caliber. And I'll drop a link here in the chat. Caliber is great because you can set up a Slack bot. It'll remind you when a site is going up or down. You can trigger it with CI/CD deploys. It's also nice too because it'll send you an emailed report. You can monitor specific URLs. So as a whole, I recommend that you're probably doing regular checks of single pages, but you're also setting up some sort of longer term page speed performance monitoring. But to answer the question more completely, I'm going to actually ask Michelle to say, how else would you monitor performance if it wasn't page speed?
Okay, Thank you for that setup. But also I wanted to just add on, when you're using page speed insights, and this is actually something that I've learned from Leo and working with some of the team at XWP, when you run a performance scan, you're getting a snapshot in time. So there, again, so many variables that can go into what that performance score is. And so you can't just run it one time and be like, oh, that's my performance score. So a good rule of thumb is to maybe run it 2 or 3 times an average, or take that middle number, and that's going to give you a more healthy idea of what it is, and then pay attention to it consistently. This isn't just look at it once or look at it, whenever you think of it. This is a pretty regular piece of data that you want to keep your eye on.
I should also add really, really quickly about that, because I forgot to mention the 2 other bits that's also free that you might also be using. Search Console and Google Analytics. So if you happen to be using those tools, you probably should be, because it's great to get some free site health information. They both have specific areas around performance. I can also drop some links in the chat as well around that.
So,
yeah, and so that's the one that I use the most, is Google Analytics, is I'm paying attention to. You can create custom events on things that are important to you. So when you think about performance, not from the page perspective, but what is your user trying to understand or achieve on your site, create a custom event and then monitor how many times that event happens. And a lot of times people think that's just like submitting a contact form, and that's the event that they want to they pay attention to. But I like to pay attention to the indicators that lead up to that. Returning visitors, people visiting multiple pages, or following a specific journey within my site. If I sent them to a landing page and I want them to click to another page, I'm going to create an event that says how many times does user actually hit those 2 pages in that order and follow that journey. And so there are other things that we can pay attention to see if your content and the work and the wireframe and the way your layout is on your website is performing the way you want it to as well.
when it comes to scores, I mean, like, everybody comes down to, at the end of the day, a lot of people pay attention to numbers, like, your credit rating, for example. They get fixated on those numbers. And nowadays everything's mobile. So I think this was regarding the Lighthouse, but I can't be sure. If you have 2 numbers, if your mobile score is quite a bit lower than your desktop score, is that something that's normal, or is that something that, how closely do you need to pay attention to the performance of a mobile site versus desktop? And since it's, is it apples to apples comparison? And which should you be more concerned with over the other if you had to pick?
So that's a really great question, and there's a lot to unpack. So I just did a pretty good deep dive into some data analysis recently. So officially, there's some sources that say web traffic is currently 55% mobile, and 60% if you include desktop, and roughly 40%, 60% if you include tablet, and about 40% desktop. I think the numbers are actually higher for the vast majority of sites that we build and the verticals that we work in. So if you're producing publishing content, so blogs, traditional news media, or if you have a store, if you think about the kinds of things that people are buying on the go, things you might buy on the go, the numbers are closer to 70 or even 80 and sometimes even 90%. So as a whole, your mobile score is really, really important. And so much so that I would say that your desktop score matters, but it should matter only, in this case, 20 or 30% as much as your mobile score. So as a whole, you need to be optimizing for mobile. You need to be developing mobile first in terms of front-end performance and in terms of building out what your site should look like, in terms of what you design. Google specifically now on the vast majority of sites, and as of basically March, will be indexing the entire web formally, fully, officially, and I'm probably understood already, mobile first, meaning it's looking at just the mobile version of the website, picking up those pieces, saying this is the sort of authoritative thing to use forward. So basically, your mobile score is the only score you should pay attention to if you're looking between the two, between mobile and desktop. The second thing I'd also call out is that you mentioned a little bit around, like, you can get confused with all these numbers and you get obsessed about these things, and numbers change a little bit every single day. Real user metrics, like the metrics describing what users that come to your site actually experience, are actually probably more important to tell that story. So I actually have one more tool, because I can just keep talking about tools all day long.
Well, you're talking to a tool, so go ahead.
Oh boy. So the Chrome user experience report, which is super cool, you can do lots of competitive analysis, has a dashboard that you can pull up. And this is based on a bunch of open data that Google has and collects about the actual user experience of users coming to your site.
Oh no, did he freeze or did I?
You can actually see.
His performance is okay. There, he's back,
I'm back.
and he's not the one in
So
Texas.
as you look at,
FYI.
ah, if you look at the Chrome user experience, you can see different parts of what percentage of your users are experiencing a fast or slow website. And so also on PageSpeed Insights, you get part of that data. And so generally what you want to see is that your lab data is 3 out of 3 core web vitals today. We want sites to in the CDN and what you should be using CDN, which is a whole other really technical talk. Did I lose you again? I saw you all freeze for half a second. Your actual user experience in the wild is the thing that really does matter. So you want to be measuring core web vitals, and you also want to be measuring what users are actually experiencing. So between the Chrome user experience report, which is included in PageSpeed Insights, you will see what percentage of your users are getting fast mobile experiences. And that's the number that you should probably be obsessed on. You should be worried about the ones that are in the reds. You should not have very many of those and trying to grow the number of greens. That's really going to be the key part of your opportunity to really grow and focus on mobile. As a whole, the one thing that I would say that I tell most people at WordCamps and meetups and tends to be the most important part is that people who don't pay attention to mobile or consider mobile as a secondary element are literally throwing away money. They're missing out on their customers, they're missing out on the opportunities because of the general trends of the web and probably the trends of your vertical.
That's pretty good
So,
summary. Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm going to offer a slightly different perspective to kind of just also consider these same things.
Fight. No.
So, well, this is why I hang out with Leo, is because he is always like looking at the technology and what the data is saying. And I'm a big data buff as well, but I also pay attention to the behavioral qualitative side of it. And it really comes down to who your audience is. Again, like the more you know about them, we know as the greater web as a whole, yes, more people are using mobile, but a lot of people, especially freelancers who are building for smaller businesses or mom and pop shops or brick and mortars and things like that, they still, depending on the type of site you're building for and the type of audience you have, you still might see more desktop than mobile. And there is more, and if you think about how people behave when they're sitting down and working on a computer versus when they're scrolling things and clicking around on their phone, there's at least in Western cultures, there's this need for instant gratification, especially when you're on your phone. But that stress and that anxiety of that need for instant gratification is slightly less when you're working on a desktop. So you have more of an intrinsic leniency when your users are operating from a desktop than a mobile. So a different perspective than what Leo's bringing to the table, but it still says pay attention to mobile first. And so that I do agree with, for sure.
Okay, we know where you live, Michelle. I mean, at least from a statewide perspective, it's okay. I'm sorry, Leo, you want to do a quick follow-up to that?
Yeah, I mean, I really do agree with Michelle here as well. I think the key thing is that if you optimize for mobile, you're probably optimizing for desktop. So it's very rare in the situation that you have a slow desktop site and fast mobile site. It's almost always fast and fast together.
That's fair.
How do you measure things when it comes to login memberships websites? Now, obviously, I'm guessing that if you need to log in to see something, Google might not. And that would be something Google may not be aiming for first. But if you're aiming for performance with these tools, and let's say it's a social site or something, and a lot of the stuff really is like mostly behind some sort of login, or that's where most of the site stuff really comes to light. Is there a really quick answer to somebody who asks that? What would you do in that case?
So I'll give the shortest answer to a deep technical piece here. So hosting is a very heated discussion at meetups, but what I would say is when you pay a lot more for hosting, your host probably includes a tool like New Relic or similar types of like deeper data logs. With that, you get a lot more reality of the kind of number crunching that happens in the background to be able to deliver dynamic data. So if you're hosting a full membership site and say your revenue is several $1,000s a month and you're paying at least a couple hundred, if not several $1,000s a month to be able to host and manage that site, you should be getting the very best in those reports, and you should be able to study and explore those things. And working with a really great agency partner, or again, learning what these scores mean and learning how to optimize them, will ultimately improve that site experience, because every single page that's slow means that every single user who's hitting that database at the exact same time is getting that same slow experience.
So it's going to be a little bit.
Need to really.
No.
Go ahead.
So it's a little bit more complicated. It's more complicated than entering a URL into some tool and then getting scores back. You need to get a little bit more sophisticated reporting.
Yeah, well, the other cool thing right now is that Google's Speed tool within analytics that does track a little bit of what's happening on page will surface this. So if you have pages that are, trackable in GA that are logged in, you'll be able to change them.
David,
Someone unmuted.
sorry, Leo. Leo, you may have to unmute yourself.
Oh, no worries. If you're able to track speed currently using Google Analytics, and so it's a kind of a new report, it's not available on all accounts. If you can see that currently, that might be the easiest low-hanging fruit way. But the more sort of sophisticated way would be ideally on a server level, you're able to track these logs that show what that looks like, because public-facing tools won't be able to show that in-app experience.
Okay,
And
so
building
here,
on that,
Mhm.
sorry. So what you're talking about is really, again, the technical performance and that speed performance. So if you want to see what the impact is and those insights are from a user perspective, there are tools like Hotjar or Heap Analytics that are additional analytics tools that you can put in, and those can go into your behind your subscription walls. It can go into your login. They can even go into your back dashboards. Wherever your users are interacting, you can put that code in and still watch those deeper engagements and watch heat maps and see how and ultimately you can even make comparisons on the front end on your user website, how people are engaging in the performance. And then once they get to the back end of it and they're logged in, are there differences in how they're engaging and behaving on your site? And so there are other things you can add too.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more further bit around the page speed performance questions. Like thinking about page-to-page navigation experiences, if you have really big, robust parts of your membership site or maybe e-commerce store, if you build a reactive application and you're able to load the next page or the next part of the experience even faster. So say, for example, you have a product page and a cart and you're able to get all the way through. If that first page loads really quickly, say with Next.js is the static rendered page and it gets that experience quickly, the bundle spins up and it's able to load the next page quickly, you might actually be able to get the best of both worlds, the best of a static site, the best of sort of dynamic reactive site. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. The sites that are the most interesting, the most cutting edge are really trying to measure not just performance, but also the secondary performance of each action that a user takes. So a lot of what Michelle is describing is the events that occur beyond the initial page load. And when we talk about performance, you really have to consider the whole journey. And that's, again, like, you gotta start somewhere, start with the basics, but the more you push further and further, the more you can make a bigger difference on your site.
So
and that's why you want everyone on your team thinking about it. So because every different person on your team that's thinking about performance is going to have their own set of performance tools that they're going to want to pay attention to. There's not a one size tool that's going to meet the needs of all the different perspectives holistically around your organization.
So here's a question for you. So I know a big Google update is coming, and I forget, and I think it's coming next month or it's coming in April. I can't remember which. Something's big is coming. What's that?
May 1st.
May 1st.
Core Vitals.
Okay. So that involves more of a user experience response type of measurement than, it's not just how fast your site runs or how good it looks on mobile. So can you give a very brief, because we don't have a lot of time left, can you kind of give like a preview of what Google is doing on May 1st so that people listening tonight could have it under, at least they know it's coming, and you can drop a few links in chat later to expand on it?
I mentioned it in the main presentation, but I'll bring it up again.
Yeah,
There's
because
three
it's important,
sections that matter. Yeah, it's super important. Largest contentful paint, content layout shift, and first input delay. So these three metrics are observable technical performance pieces that have lots of rules and there's some tricks you can do to improve these things. For example, you can create dynamic sizes to prevent content layout shift, yada, yada, yada. You can pre-paint boxes. All of these articles are over at web.dev. So Google has put together a ton of really great resources. And basically, if you talk to the team at Chrome and at Google, they're fed up. They're tired of sites sucking. So if your site loads poorly, it's probably because it hadn't had all the things come together in a way that should have been there, right? So now is the opportunity for us as a community to come together to push that quality of code just a little bit further. So if you're able to improve your theme, or maybe you can choose a different theme, or maybe you can consider sort of off-the-shelf solutions like AMP, for example, that sort of work with Core Vitals by default. There's a lot of different approaches that can get you there. I'd recommend considering what is the easiest pathway there and to try to make incremental improvements. So the overall total score from page speed or Lighthouse score doesn't really matter as much as these three core vitals. And Google has said they're going to give a signal boost to the sites that meet those 3 core web vitals. If you don't meet them and you're doing okay now, you might experience a pretty big slip, especially if your competitors do meet those scores. And I'll say it one more time, it's definitely achievable. Most sites today I see can actually hit it. It's very rare that I see a site that can't hit those 3 out of 3 core web vitals in a good score.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
and it comes down to things like how heavy are your images, like or what's your font construction like. So there are little tiny things that can be changed. So don't freak out if you're worried about hitting those 3 core web vitals. There are resources for you, and you can accomplish it.
okay, cool. So can you just, thank you very much, both of you, for your time. And if you want to just drop, we're going to share the link to the slides through the email that we send afterwards. So if you want to drop any useful links, you've done so already in the chat. I saw Keep Analytics and Hotjar and all of that stuff. If you got anything more to throw in there while we do our last talk, that would be great. Also drop in ways people can find you, your websites, Twitter handles, you know, your soon to be very cold room in Texas, hopefully not. But thank you very much both for coming and speaking for us this evening. Hopefully that gives us a kind of a better idea as to what performance we should pay attention to. You know, it's more than just a number. I think Leah said that, but I think it's also more important of like what's coming down the road now. It's not just about mobile anymore. It's all these other analytics we have to pay attention to. So very, very appreciative of that. So thanks a bunch. Bob, and excuse me, Bud, are you there? Because we've been trying to text you, buddy.
I'm here.
Okay, great. So we are actually going to save our last trivia show based on our last performance presentation for the end of this end of the evening. Just hopefully crossing fingers, make sure that people see more than some people see more than shapes when we're going to test it. But in the meantime, we do want to give a shout out to some to the meetups that are here tonight. We actually, in fact, it's a whole bunch of people that showed up tonight. We had one of our larger RSVP numbers tonight, but we have WordPress Charleston, WordPress Orlando, WordPress Montclair meetup. If you're part of these meetups now, feel free to share. Well, Jean's already shared all the links to them in there, but if you're part of these meetups I'm counting up, just feel free to say hi in the chat. We have WordPress St. Petersburg, WordPress Southwest Florida, and Las Vegas. Those are 2 separate ones in case everybody's bad with geography. Palm Beach as well. And again, we have people here tonight from Indiana and India. I was actually kind of technically right. You know, it's 1 or 2 letters of a difference. And Taipei, this is what happens when you have a 30-inch monitor and 12-inch text or 11 pixel text. I'm starting to get more into accessibility. That might be a subject we cover very, very soon here on the WordPress Mega Meetup. So thank you all to all the meetups. Give a great shout out. And if I missed your meetup, feel free to drop it in the chat. So we're going to do one more presentation. Bud is going to give a presentation about Elementor themes. And then we're going to do a trivia game show for one last giveaway. We want to also say, I don't know if Heather is still here. It doesn't matter if she is because I'm going to email her. But Heather, I believe you're the one who won the t-shirt swag contest. So really appreciative about that as well, that you threw your picture on some random person's website. Thank you. My wife will be asking questions later. So Bud, take it away. Let's talk some Elementor.
Okay. Let's see. So you can see my screen?
Yeah. Bud, I'm going to have to step away for a second. Can you tell me how long this is again?
How long it's going to take for me to do this?
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know.
Say that again?
Half hour, 40 minutes, something like that.
Well, we're going to have to keep it to a half hour because that's all we have.
Okay, 29 minutes. All right.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, I've got to get something out of the way. Give me a second here to get this out of the way. Don't need this. Oh, screwed that up. I don't know why I'm having, let me just get this out of the way. All right, and I've got all kinds of stuff I want to clean up for. And let me just get started with this over here. And just give me a second here. I don't know why this isn't working. Of course,
No
it doesn't
problem.
work.
Oh, we see a thin white line, which sounds like the latest Tom Cruise movie
Yeah.
for some reason.
No, here we go. You should see a snowy picture. All right. Ugh. Can you see that? Let's go back to the snowy picture. Can we see that?
I'm not seeing anything snowy.
No, we don't see it.
How about working with Elementor templates? Do we see that?
No.
It looks like you're sharing like a very wide
I am.
screen or very, well,
Well,
yeah. It's a very wide white bar. So I'm not sure if that helps you at all.
well, let me just get to it then. Okay, so let me just get this out of the way and we'll just get right to it. So we'll just.
Is there something that you can send as a PDF over to
No,
us and we
it's
can
not
share the
really-
screen as you go
It's
through?
not really worth it. I mean, it was just an introductory thing that I spent like 8 hours on, you know.
Well, you can definitely send it after the meeting
Well,
too, if
I
that's
guess.
still an option.
Let me get this little piece of, you know, I have like 2 bars of UI, believe it or not. I don't get that at all for the Zoom. Okay. This is not making any sense and really annoying. Let me just get this out of the way. All right, maybe we can do it now. Who knows? Can everybody see this? Does this look a little familiar and does everybody see this?
No, we're still seeing the white bar. Why don't you stop sharing and then
All
reshare?
right, I'm gonna do that. Okay, all right. I stopped sharing, right?
Okay.
And I'm gonna share. Okay. I'm having a problem here.
Okay, we see a cursor across a white screen
Yeah,
and a pencil.
okay. I got that. And can you, and now you see this, oh man.
And then now you're going to a less tall white screen. You're kind of going the same way you were going before. And now you're switching between just a white bar and a
Yeah, I don't know.
shorter white
If I
bar.
do that, I just get rid of the sharing of the screen. So it's just not working because if I do this back to here, and if I minimize this, I can't.
Okay. Well, you can either give your presentation without the visual, or we can just have you on again next month if you want, because we can
Well,
substitute. It's up to you. I'll
yeah.
let you make the choice.
Yeah, just let's try it one more time, and then if I just can't do it, oh, that sucks.
Okay, you started screen
don't know
sharing.
why.
I see there's a cursor in the
I have-
lower right hand.
Yeah, I have
There's a cursor in the.
What's so weird about this is I have 2 of those Zoom bars, you know, those UI bars that Zoom gives you. I have 2 of them. That doesn't make any sense. I've never seen that before, and I've done this 10,000 times.
Yeah, I see a icon in the lower right hand corner that it looks like a Zoom window. Yep, and you're pretty much going the same way you were before. Where
And
the
I
white
just
bar-
can't, if I close this, I can only either do one of 2 things. I can either open it up like this, which doesn't do any good, or I could just turn it off, which doesn't do any good. I mean, I could just close it and it's not going to do any good. So I'm stuck. If I do this, we're back to here.
Yep. Well, we definitely want to hear your presentation and see actually your presentation.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
So if you want, you can, if you even want to, we can work out the kinks together, and then next you can speak next month if you want. Oh, wait, we got something. We actually see a pages in your WordPress site.
Okay, so let's just get to that now. So let me just say hello. My name is Bud Krause. I hope I'm with friends. Okay. I wanted to, if I can do this real quick, just throw up the PowerPoint just really quick, because it's like I said, I spent like too much time on it.
I don't know, Bud, you're playing with fire. We got something working here, but you
I
make the
think I can
calls.
get this done. All right, let's just get this done. I think this will work now. Let me just do this over.
Place your bets. Place your bets.
No, don't do anything. Here we go. All right, you should see a white screen and then eventually you'll see something else. Well, let's just see over here. All right, do you see this?
I feel like I'm an optometrist. No, we still see your WordPress pages back end.
Really? Wow, that just sucks. Okay. All right. I don't understand why that worked. All right, so let's just talk about this then, and we'll do the best I can. Although I'd rather, I'm starting to think maybe I should come back and do this another time, but.
Well, one or the other. It does. Like, we know you put a lot of time into the presentation.
Yeah,
so
I
that's
did.
why I'm giving
I
you the
actually
option.
did. I'd rather come back and do it another time because I feel
Okay.
already too rushed. And
No, don't worry. You're frustrated, rushed. It's the same way when my kids are home. I really don't want to have to deal with anything more than I have.
yeah,
You
if it's all
already
right
know
with
now. So,
What?
but just as a preview for let's say next month,
Right.
what is your expertise with Elementor?
Well, I've been using it for, okay, sure. I've been using it for a year. I built a couple sites with it. And I think there's some really interesting aspects of it to help speed the process of building a site and maintaining it. And my presentation is about using Elementor templates and theme builder template and stuff like that. So, but I don't really want to rush it because I already feel like I'm going to do that. And
No, I don't want to rush anything. But how long have you been using Elementor?
For about a year.
And have you used
I first
any other?
saw it. I first saw it about when it was in its infancy and didn't really pay any much attention to it. And so, like I said, I built a couple of sites with it, including I rebuilt my site with it, and it was quite an experience, and I learned a ton doing it. But I've also done some client sites with it too. So rather than just rush through it, how about if we get a rain check and do it another time?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and sorry for those who were showing up tonight, but who were looking for Bud's presentation, but
come back.
Come back next month. I guess we have some technical difficulties, and I'll make sure I'll work with Bud personally before the meetup to make sure things are working.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, typically we like to get them in before the meetup, but we couldn't communicate with Bud with audio until the meetup started. So we really tried. There is some other things though that are interesting, and I'm going to turn off your screen sharing for a bit there. Actually, turn off your screen sharing there, Bud.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so Elementor is next month. So, but there is some number of things that are happening in the WordPress space that we want to cover for the next few minutes or so. So I'm going to share my screen. And let me share my screen. And feel free to place questions anywhere. I actually do have placed questions in the Zoom chat there. I actually have experience with Elementor more from the developer side. I am now creating a custom module for a plugin I work for called Enviro Gallery. We're creating a custom module for Elementor. So hopefully when we get that up running in a couple of months, our users with our Elementor photo gallery plugin are going to be able to use, the regular photo gallery plugin in Enviro Gallery will be able to throw in the galleries through Elementor. So it's going to look pretty cool. So there's a couple of things I want to make people aware of in the WordPress space. There is, first of all, WordPress.org blog right here. WordPress 5.7 is coming very, very soon. And in fact, the official release date is March 9th, 2021. So the question is, what is new with this release? Well, we'll hopefully get to that in a second, or we might have to get to that in our next meetup. But by the time the next meetup happens, WordPress 5.7 is already going to be coming out. This is just the latest beta that is being advertised here on the blog post. I thought RC Candidate was out. Huh, I must be hallucinating or something along those lines. But there is, by early March, going to be another WordPress version landing in your lap. There is nothing that I think one would need to worry about overall about updating to WordPress 5.7. A lot of your WordPress hosts, managed hosts, will probably let you know that it's coming and will be upgraded soon. There was no jQuery problems. There should be no jQuery funny business with WordPress 5.7 in case any of you experience some jQuery issues with the 5.6 release. They aren't removing the migrate jQuery plugin until I think WordPress 5.8. Feel free to disagree or drop any links into the chat about this. So you want to make sure that's coming down the road. Now, the latest version of WordPress is, make sure you get it. It is 5.6.1. So 5.6.1 I think came out within the last week or so. It was just a minor security update for the most part, but make sure you do have the latest for that. Some of the things here, just let me switch my menus. A couple of the links that I found very interesting, and if you don't spend too much time in WordPress land, WordPress community land, you may find some of these things interesting. And I'm going to drop a link to drop links in the Zoom as I go over this. But just give me a second here, because I am pulling something up on the seat of my pants. There we go. I was correct. It's just not on the blog yet. WordPress 5. This is the 5.62 release candidate. So that's why I was getting my versions mixed up. So we have WordPress 5.7 coming out in March 7th or something along those lines. And 5.62 is the latest version of what you're currently using. It's mainly a bug fix. So expect to see WordPress 5.6.2 in the next week and 5.7 next month. All right, that settles that. Another interesting trend, if you do work with WordPress, you'd like to know about the business side of it too. So do I. So this is a good post. I'll drop the link here in the Zoom. These are search trends in 2020. And of course, 2020 was just, a lot of people suffered in 2020, and a lot of businesses actually prospered because of the circumstances. So this is a good article to read, just based on the raw results from the search engine traffic and the keywords that were generated from last year. And this is all public information, but this site actually breaks it down a little bit for you in terms of what was searched the most and who were the winners and who didn't win so much. So long story short, WordPress plugins, a lot of WordPress plugins, especially those in the WordPress economy plugins or e-commerce plugins, did very well, saw an upshoot in traffic and searches. It was actually a huge year for WooCommerce. Searches were up dramatically. So if you're thinking about getting into e-commerce and WordPress, I mean, you could have got into it a year ago and doing super probably, and but there's still a lot of time to go into it now. Pandemic is not over. There are themes didn't grow as far as search traffic. In fact, some themes were not searched for as much. So you could say they were getting maybe a little less popular. You could use those words. There were some other themes though that did perfectly well. If anybody is familiar with the theme Astria, they seem to be getting more popular, at least in terms of search traffic. So I thought it was an interesting article to review. And the other interesting, if you're into the business of WordPress and you can listen to podcasts, or I think there's a YouTube video on this as well. One of the community members, Matt Menendez, interviews Matt Mullenweg, the co-creator of WordPress. And Automatic has this program where they're selling $5,000 kind of websites. So it's a market that if you happen to address that market, then you might be interested in this discussion with Matt about what the company Automatic is doing in that field and what kind of experiment it is. And along the lines of maybe you know someone who could use a $5,000 website on WordPress.com, then you definitely want to learn about this service as well. So those links are there in the Zoom chat. So what is next? There is, I'm not a very good salesperson. So this was a great talk. And by the way, all these links that I get that I'm able to like pull out of thin air almost is because I do a newsletter for a WordPress community site called Post Status. And it's a paid membership, but you get access to a Slack with like all of the WordPress people that built your plugins are probably in there. Nice, very friendly community, and you get a newsletter every week. So that's where I'm pulling the links from, is the fact that I gather them all for these newsletters. And I kind of I don't put out every link that I come across. I usually put out the best of the bunch that we discover that week. And one of the best of the bunch in terms of marketing was this talk by Hans Skullrid, I believe his name is called. And he is Termageddon, I think is his company that's doing pretty well. And if you want a full length WordPress 40-minute talk or WordCamp 40-minute talk on marketing 101, marketing basics, like marketing is not evil type of talk to kind of build you up for that. Maybe you're a freelancer just starting out. I recommend this video because he did a darn good job of explaining it and not make you feel guilty at the end for charging money for your work. And he also included some tactics in there that might actually benefit you in the long run in terms of how you market yourself, which I believe is pretty well, in this day and age, we need all the sales we can get. There is also another interesting, if you're into statistics, there is another post that I'm dropping in here. How many websites use WooCommerce? So if you, again, are someone who's interested in building WooCommerce sites, this is definitely something you want to check out to see how the market is doing right now and where it's projected to be this year. If you're an agency too, you might be encountering more WooCommerce websites, or you may want to open yourself to that possibility in the near future. So again, this is statistics. This is, trends. I like these types of things because it gives me, it doesn't make me think too hard about when I see lines and graphs and all that stuff. These people translate it pretty well for you. So I definitely think you'd be interested in that. If you are an Elementor customer, you just may want to be aware that they are rolling out a price hike for new customers. This caused a little bit of a stir in the WordPress community just because it kind of came out of nowhere. So again, if you have an existing active subscription plan, there are no changes. If you're a new customer, I believe the studio plan that used to be $199 sometime in March will be $499. So that is a significant jump. So again, you're grandfathered in, but you can go ahead and read this article from WP Tavern that kind of explains that. If you are thinking about using Elementor for more than one website, again, I think nothing's changing on the lower end. But if you're an agency or if you do a lot of websites with Elementor, now might be a good time to kind of make a decision in terms of, should you continue or keep up your active subscription to avoid a higher cost later. I'm not sure again how many people use Elementor. You can, if you have any questions about that in the chat. I don't know if Bud's still around, but we could certainly use, if we have any questions, now's a good time, and next month too. So there is, I'm looking here for something in particular. If you are a developer, you'd be interested to know that some things are coming to next month's release of WordPress 5.7. I will leave this particular one in the chat, but you can use this entire site has various developer updates in terms of new functions and theme functions and all of that. I won't go into this one specific because it's pretty narrow based for WordPress 5.7. But if you're a developer and you haven't paid attention to 5.7 yet coming out next month, you may want to, because it has some updated functions that you may want to know about. There was a significant update to the WordPress market share on around February 10th. And I don't mean to promote my own stuff, but this is just the easiest way to do it. WordPress hit 40% market share. The top, I think it's 10 million, or 10 or 100, it's missing a zero. I think it's 10 million sites. So right now, this is a February 10th. This is what the top market share was for CMSs in the so for example, it's all the way onto the right hand side of that chart. 37.8% have no detectable CMS, and this is through W3 Techs. The WordPress, as you can see, it went from 35% this time last year to 40%. And remember, this is like the top 10 million websites of the web. Or effectively, it is effectively what we say 40% of the web. And you can see the next one below that is Shopify. And while Shopify is growing, obviously you can understand during the pandemic, it went from 2 to 3%, which is a huge jump in of itself for the entire web. But as you can see, it's for a second place under WordPress, it's very small. 40 to 30, 40 to 3 is a very huge leap. So WordPress is a very comfortable lead. And then below that, you have Joomla, Squarespace, Drupal. The sad part about this is that the open source ones on this list, the Joomla and the Drupals, their market share is actually decreasing slowly. You can see Drupal has gone down and Joomla has gone down as well. Squarespace seems to be more or less, hanging on its own. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. And then I guess Wix for some reason is down there too. It's increasing. So it's, yeah, if you don't pay attention to something like this, it doesn't impact your business, but it shows how much WordPress has grown. This is I think 2020 was the biggest growth of WordPress ever, period. So I just found that very interesting. And this is, I guess, another chart, not telling us anything we didn't already know up here. But at the bottom, it's the fastest growing content management systems. WordPress is still the fastest growing and Squarespace is the third. But look at number 2. Again, WooCommerce is one of the fastest growing sectors, even if you don't count WordPress. This is just separate from WordPress altogether. WooCommerce sites are the second fastest growing quote unquote content management systems. And Brian in the chat says WordPress is now at 40.2% and the month's not even ending. So I used to think that WordPress would stop at around 40%. And I thought this about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I haven't really given it much thought since because it kept increasing. I remember when it was the third of the web, 33.3%. So now we are technically past 40%. So we're not sure. It doesn't show any signs of slowing down. It will stop. I mean, it will stop eventually. Where will it stop?
I got a quick question. Would WooCommerce kind of help push that up? Because I know there's been a huge uptick in 2020 for people creating like e-commerce sites and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I'm thinking that's kind of helping it push it up to like 40%. Between WooCommerce and Shopify, that's kind of the way most people go. They lean towards WooCommerce and Shopify.
Absolutely. And I'm convinced e-commerce is what drove this. But WordPress was going fast before the pandemic too. I just think that it just went fast. I think WooCommerce probably this was the fastest growing year, and it's hard to say otherwise that, oh, if the pandemic never happened, will it have been the same? I doubt it. Michelle thinks it also has something to do with the rising gig economy. That's probably another piece of it too. It's always a little bit fuzzy with this site, how they count. I think WooCommerce is included with the WordPress installs, but WooCommerce is also separate. It's like they also measure WooCommerce sites as their own thing, which also run on WordPress. So it gets a little bit kind of confusing, honestly. They go by daily number of it.
Shopify on the list though, which is kind of confusing. You see like Shopify mixed in with Joomla and Drupal and WordPress. Shopify is not a CMS, is more considered an e-commerce platform than anything.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing around with gray areas here in terms of definitions, but this chart does say daily number of additional sites in the top million. So in the top 10 million sites since January 1st, 533 of them are WooCommerce based. So 533 in the top 10 million, which means it's the second largest growing quote unquote content management system. So the thing here is that WooCommerce is growing faster than Squarespace, at least by their measurements. Again, they're just going by the top 10 million from the beginning of the year. And, websites can change CMSs all the time. It happens, but it's definitely something that, right now Shopify and Squarespace are growing, but WordPress is still outpacing them. And yeah, of course, a great community is also going to help to be a part of that. If things go the way they're going, we will see WordPress hit 50% in 2 years, in 2023, I think. If the pandemic dies down a little bit, who's to say what's going to happen? I personally didn't think it'd get to 40%, but I think at 50%, I start to have some serious doubts that we'll start to see growth slow. And that's why Automatic and all these other companies are doing all these initiatives with $5,000 websites and all that to kind of keep the growth going along. But anyway, I thought that was an amazingly interesting statistic to check out. So I'm not, and speaking of WooCommerce, I'm not sure if anybody's aware, but the WordPress WooCommerce 5.0 was released, and you can I'm not going to talk about WooCommerce anymore because I think I'm all wooed out, but you can also read that link I'm dropped in the chat for more information about the latest version and all the interesting features. What type of WordPress site has the largest share of that 40%? I don't understand the question. What type? WooCommerce, themes, Gutenberg? I'm not understanding the question. I don't know, Gene. Maybe you can clarify what Brian's trying to ask. By vertical.
I think he wants to know what type of site. Like, is it like a regular blog site, little content site? Is it
W3? Site? Yeah, W3 can't tell that. All they're looking at is that the metadata for the websites underneath the source code. So the only reason why they can tell their WooCommerce sites is because that's also in the metadata as well, and that's something people want to track. I'm sure if they put their mind to it, they could probably track that to a certain extent, but no, sadly, I don't think they tell you. I just closed my chat window too. There we go. So anyway, that is kind of like an overlook of the WordPress market right now. It is obviously very strong. WooCommerce is amazingly versatile right now. There is also some new updates regarding Gutenberg, which I think I'll probably save until next month because it's hard to pull information out of these as I'm talking with you. There are some other interesting acquisitions that WordPress made. If anybody is aware of Parse.ly, Automatic acquired them. So unless, I believe it's an analytics solution. So if you're not into analytics, then this won't be of any use to you, but maybe you have heard the name. There is also, if you're a developer, I suggest you check out Maciej left a link in the Zoom chat as well about the creator of, or the main contributor of WP GraphQL and what he's doing. And this kind of ties in a little bit this does tie in a little bit with the static site generators and stuff like that, some of which use WP GraphQL. I don't know if they're going to split up Parse.ly, but that is just a conversation I'm not qualified to have at all. There is just 1 second. So another link you may want to check out, especially if you're into the latest plugins, is Nathan Ingram does a plugin roundup over at iThemes every month. And this link is the latest one. So let me just drop that in there. So he basically does what I don't have time for. He goes in the WordPress plugin directory and he pulls out the latest and most interesting things that have happened in the past month. So, if you're looking for new plugins or you're just wondering what's out there, what's capable, this is something you want to bookmark, keep track of. And this is the one that for February 2021. There is also, skipping past that one. There is also a WordPress plugin to test the rollback of plugin theme update failures. So if you're a developer and you put this into your plugin, then this is definitely a plugin or another plugin you want to install to help you with your development on that. There is also going to be, sorry, let me check this here. I usually do a top 10, which is usually a lot more fluid than this. So this is an interesting link about WP Rocket, which is a WordPress cache plugin. And they chose Gutenberg and how their performance was increased by using the Gutenberg plugin. I forgot what they were using before. They do tell you in the article, I think somewhere. But if you're ever interested, if you have a site now that is not based on Gutenberg blocks and you're wondering about how much it can perform, then this is definitely a link to check out, and I'll throw that in there as well. So that is all we have. Kind of like a hodgepodge of various links in there. Definitely want to give some of those a look. So I think we're down now to the trivia game show portion. And honestly, since I've been talking to you, I haven't really had a time to test this to see if it's working. Last time it wasn't. Last time I could barely tell either. So I have this queued up. So let me unmute. So there we are. So this is our last trivia game show for the night. So if you go to kahoot.it and enter pin number 7449107, and while we're waiting for players to line up there, I do want to let you know about the next mega meetup. The next mega meetup, we don't have, as of right now, we don't have a date exactly confirmed. And so I do have to talk to Bud and other planned speakers to see what date is good for them. But if I was a betting man, and if you've seen my wallet, you would know that I'm not. It would probably be either March 16th or March 18th, which is a Tuesday or Thursday, right smack in the middle of March. And so if you want to come back, if you want to speak or share anything about WordPress, feel free to come back. As you can see, we have a global audience to talk to, so that's kind of unique. If you'd like to talk to people around the world about anything related to WordPress, feel free to message me, and Gene and I are always looking for people. In fact, you can also, even if you feel up to it, even if you're a WordPress meetup organizer, feel free to come help us co-host the show too. Would be kind of nice. I could use a night off. I would think so. Third Tuesday of every month. Okay, so maybe. So I have to find out when the New York meetups and the Philly meetups are happening, because it sounds like to me those are the weeks that everybody seems to pick for some reason. So, but anyway, if I was a betting man, it would be either the midweek in March or the one maybe right after that. So we'll send an email out once we've confirmed. We already know one speaker is going to be there, Bud, talking about Elementor themes. So there's already one speaker. We also have a few other speakers potentially lined up. It could be an Elementor e-commerce theme or an Elementor marketing theme next month. So anyway, let's see. There is a link in the chat for a call for testing for full site editing. Now, there is a subject I would like to get really, really deep into, because in a couple of months, or excuse me, later this year, the blocks that you use to set up the editor for your posts and pages in WordPress, that concept is going site-wide. So imagine using blocks with menus, with widgets, full site editing, it's called. So it's not just about posts and pages anymore, dealing with blocks. It'd be your entire, the vast majority of your WordPress site. And I would love to be able to get someone to preview that at some point, maybe in March or April, because it's very exciting, a very fundamental change to WordPress. So anyway, Gene is dropping in the meetups that were involved. And if you want to get your meetup involved, you should come on. You can come on and even talk about your meetup. Say when it's occurring, show off a little bit. Feel free to do so. Reach out to us. We'll add you to the list, and you can come on before the mega meetup begins or as the meetup begins. Well, St. Louis, we thank you right back. All right, I think now we're pretty much good to go. So again, if we have, I never saw a problem with the shapes just coming up, but if we have the problem, then we're just going to have to call this randomization, because there's nothing really much else I can do about it. All right. And by the way, the chat goes away as soon as this thing ends. So email me or send me something on Twitter if you're interested in speaking. That would be great, because my mind is a bunch of spaghetti right now. So here is our mega meetup performance. Performance solely refers to page speed alone. True or false? I didn't say these were hard. Right. There's a lot more than page speed involved. I think Michelle said that. Ooh, we have gators and wildcats. That sounds scary. Developers are responsible for website performance. This was a poorly worded one, I'll have to admit. Developers are not the only one responsible. That's on me. This is this is what happens when you do a quiz at the same time that somebody is speaking. The point here was that developers are not the only ones solely responsible for website performance. That was, I think Michelle is the one who gave me that one question. So we still have our top 2 contenders in place. So there goes something for you. When does your site require a performance audit? Really hope they mentioned this because I don't remember hearing it, but I'm distracted by keys jingling. Weekly. Well, apparently it was said because most of you got it correct. Yes. Weekly performance audit of your site is what was preferred. Cat's on fire, apparently.
I should say for extra bonus points, we probably would recommend daily.
I don't need to be a developer to truly care about web performance. This is what you say to yourself in the mirror at night when you're trying to go to bed, I guess, to build up your self-confidence. True. Yes, you don't need to be a developer because everybody should be caring about their web performance. And then as the talk went into, now you know many different ways and tools that you don't need to be a developer to figure out. All right, so here we go. Let's skip the animation. Legend Wildcat, go ahead and send me a screenshot. Fast Otter and Groovy Panda, and these are sentences that I never thought I would say in my life. Please go ahead and send me your information as well, just in case Legend Wildcat is sleeping, and then you can grab their spot. Send something to me in email with a screenshot proving to me that you're you. So enough, just for the sake of things, I'm going to drop my email address into chat one more time. Okay, so Jean, can you think of anything else we want to share for tonight that we haven't shared already? Turn on your mic, Jean.
No, I think we covered everything. Actually, it's kind of getting late for me for some reason.
For some reason, the sun is down. My bedtime was 2 hours ago.
Oh, well, I'm still tired.
I do the Denny's old person special at 5, and then boom, I'm usually to bed. But I stay up for this; it's worth it. All right, so Heather won the dry T-shirt contest, and we had 2 other winners. Thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring, get us out prizes there as well. If you have any suggestions for things you would like to hear, regardless if you're in the in any meetup, feel free to send them along, and we'll find speakers. We already had 2 or 3 people direct message us tonight asking if they wanted to give their talks on various things. So that's cool. But you don't have to give really lengthy talks. As you saw, Suma came on earlier tonight and she talked about a volunteer initiative that she hopes people can be interested in. If there are like a plugin that you want to do like a quick review, like between 2 ferns type of review, that would be great too. I think that would be fantastic. And also we can have a larger Q&A session, I think, too, about general WordPress things that you might be interested in. But anyway, I think that will do it for tonight. We want to thank all of our speakers. Let me stop sharing my screen. We want to thank all of our speakers here tonight from Maciek, Michelle, Joel, and Bud. We will get you next month, so you're automatically locked in for that. And we want to thank everybody. And I think I did share this in the chat, but we had people from Guy. I think Guy said we had him from 5 or 6 countries and 15 states or something along those lines tonight. Something along those lines. That's very impressive. Oh, 16 states and 5 other countries. I think he means United States and not mental states. But you know, any number at this point is good for us. So we really appreciate your support. And feel free to, we are going to send out a notice to all the meetup organizers. But if you want, if you're not really a part of an official meetup here tonight that was joining us as part of the mega meetup and you hear kind of flying solo, kind of going rogue, then feel free to be a member of the South Florida WordPress meetup. And that is the meetup that is represented by this URL dropping in the chat here. So if you're without a home, if you don't really have a home WordPress meetup, then join us. You don't have to live in South Florida for that. There is one other thing, and Gene, thank you for bringing it to my attention. We had somebody who couldn't make it here tonight that has a WordPress job in Miami. So I'm going to drop that link into the chat right now. It is it is a job for a WordPress developer, building sweepstakes e-commerce websites, general purpose websites. So if that sounds like that's something you're interested in or know somebody who does, if you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and can kind of build more or less websites from beginning to end, kind of like a full stack builder, then please go ahead and check that out. And I'll also send a link to that in the next email that goes out a few days from now. Other than that, Gene, can you think of anything else that we're missing? No.
Now I know we covered everything.
Yeah, now we know we covered everything. Yes. What I'm trying to figure out is maybe I want to do something to replace WordCamp Miami, make it virtual, call it something else for later this year. But maybe we can talk more about that next month. Maybe kind of like a mega meetup or something along those lines. Anyway, it's getting late. What I'm going to do here, we will share. I think I will share the chat. Yes. Thank you to my wife, who may or may not have left me. I don't know. I can't see out this office. So she may have packed it up and left already, but if she's still here, thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody who came here this evening. I'm going to actually leave the Zoom open for a few minutes. I'm going to shut off my audio and video. Feel free to leave the chat or leave the Zoom. But if you want to go through the chat right now and pick out any of the links that you still might want to grab before this thing turns off completely, feel free to do so. And I'll try to find a way to share the chat after we're done here through an email to everybody. Also, well, here's Esther says you can save the chat. So I just thought it was admins who could do that for some stupid reason, but apparently just go ahead. I'm still going to give you a few minutes to go ahead and save the chat. So it's good seeing the people from the South Florida WordPress community here tonight, like you, Joel. I see you there. It's good to see people that are safe, and it's been a year since we've seen everybody in person. But everybody, please be safe, and we'll see everybody next month. All right, take it easy. All right. I'm going to mute everybody again, and then I'm going to shut off my video and my mute.
Thank you.
Well, good night, everybody. Time for dinner. 9 p.m. Bye.
And thank you to Gene for keeping track of all my notes, and thank you to Guy.